So you guys came out with a very, very strong anti-Trump message. It took over your entire website in the lead up to the election. How have you been digesting this within the firm?
Yeah, I think all of us in Silicon Valley are largely in shock. You know, our statement at CRV was really a statement early on about immigration and specifically some of the comments that Donald Trump had made about Muslims, about Mexicans. You know, I think as we try and get a handle on what's happened, I think this election really is about jobs and sort of first needs of, if I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think that the data says we really have to embrace the message of Americans wanting jobs, specifically in the Midwest. And I guess I'm hopeful, I think all of us are hopeful that at least we have someone here in Silicon Valley, Peter Thiel, that I think has a bridge to the administration. I know personally, I've reached out to Peter. I think a number of us are trying to figure out, hoping he takes a role in helping us figure out how to get engaged and how to help.
What did you ask Peter?
I think for us, it's like, how do we basically get involved? I think there's a group of us here in Silicon Valley that are, want to secede from the country. And I think there's a group of us that are saying this is a reality. I think it's a real wake-up call for many of us here in Silicon Valley. What do we do to be a part of those conversations and really be helpful to the Trump administration?
Do you have any concerns about retaliation? You know, venture capitalists, the large tech companies, startups, they all have their own interests, and Washington can help.
Yeah, I think, maybe it's the entrepreneur in me. I have to go into this, with hope that Trump really does want to bridge the divide that clearly we have. It feels like there's a crack in our foundation that I feel like we haven't felt in a long time. And I guess for me, for me to move forward, my way of coping, I guess, is just to be positive, to reach out to folks like Peter, to try and engage and figure out what we can do to be helpful. I haven't spent too much time thinking about, whether I'm on a bad list somewhere and folks are going to come after us.
President Obama even came out today calling out fake news on the internet, on Facebook in particular. Do you think companies like Facebook need to take greater responsibility for the gigantic role they play in American society?
I think it's a great question, Emily, and I think that the broader question I think we'll see take place is not just about fake news, but about the algorithms and the AI that's not only influencing the news we read, but a whole number of other decisions that we're making in our lives. And so my guess is that this is kind of an early theme that we'll see get played out quite a bit. I know that for Facebook, many of my friends there are quite shocked at the way things have turned out, and their responsibility potentially, I think, is weighing on them as to, how they're influencing behaviors based on fake articles, based on us, only reading news from our friends, et cetera.
Should they have more human involvement in what people see?
That's right.
Should they? Do you think they should?
I think it's very early in us understanding what moral or ethical impact and rules Facebook needs to have, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do have humans helping edit the machines in the near term.
So what are you guys telling your portfolio companies?
It's a good question. I mean, mostly we're waiting to see. To me, it wasn't the election that's the news. I think it will be the presidency that's the news and the actions being taken. I can tell you that in different sectors, we're seeing different reactions. So as an example, if you're a hardware startup, Trump has said he wants Apple to manufacture computers here in the U.S. Does that mean if I'm a hardware startup, I won't be able to manufacture my goods in China? If I'm a GoPro or a startup importing things and I thought the international markets were really going to work for me, it turns out there's a lot of price elasticity with consumers for these consumer hardware projects. A Nest that costs $100 versus $500, you'll see huge variance in demand. And so I think we can expect tariffs. I think that those will very much influence demand in international markets. So I think that's one example. I think in other sectors like energy, we've got issues like, if solar subsidies go away, I think it'll have a big impact on funding related to energy startups. And lastly, in terms of just the pure funding market, there's been a lot of Chinese money that's been coming into the States that's been funding not just things like AngelList that we've seen and kind of early seed stage startups, but also a lot of growth rounds in VR and AR. We've got a number of companies that we're talking to, Asian investors in particular, who I think have just sort of stopped everything while they wait to see what's going to happen.
And have you guys hit pause as well?
We haven't hit pause. Most of what we do is very early stage investing.
Right.
So that, I'd say
but
that
still, you're seeing, in the broader VC environment, investors have been hitting pause.
Yeah, well, for us, usually it takes years for our companies to actually figure out what they're actually doing. so we're still very active. We're still taking meetings and still actively investing. I will say, though, on the talent side, one of the things that's been interesting to me is, core to us building companies is recruiting. Mm-hmm. And in many of the larger organizations that we tend to recruit from, I don't want to be ageist, I guess, but older employees that have seen a few cycles know how tough it can be to work at a startup when the funding environment drives up. And a number of my friends at larger companies like Google, like Facebook, who thought that 2017 would be the year they would leave and take some risk and join a startup, they've put those plans on pause.